Hi, I'm Rhiannon Faith, and I'm here to tell you a story. I had a list of things that I wanted to talk about, or I had been thinking about sharing, and actually, this thing has been on the list for a little while. Coincidentally, I ended up having a whole new experience with it. That's, again, as usual, a little bit cryptic, but talk about the Blue Angels. So I saw the other day, one of my cousin's kids was at an air show, and it reminded me, I wanted to talk about that for a little bit now. Um, Starting back to when I was in utero, I went to see the Blue Angels with my parents in San Diego at what was, at the time, NAS Miramar, and then became MCAS Miramar. We went to the air show every year, saw the Blue Angels, and one of the things my dad loved most was going and touring all the planes and walking through them and talking with the pilots. Not the Blue Angels pilots, but at the air shows, they'll have a variety of different aircraft that you can go and tour. And he would tell me all the things about all the planes. And I'm sure he was doing that before I had any comprehension of what any of that meant. Details on the specs of the plane and when it was first used and who was using it, and how it was used, and just all the details. And that was just kind of a really special thing for my dad. And then, of course, by virtue of his fondness for it, it became a special thing for me as well, going to those shows. So I had gone to see the air show every year of my existence up until 2001. And that was, of course, because of 9/11. Interestingly, the air shows in San Diego would always happen around August, which was a terrible plan. In case you've ever been in San Diego County in August, it is miserably hot. There might be a couple of days that are not horribly hot, but generally it's really too hot. And I'm sure they do it at that time of year because there's less likelihood of terrible cloud cover and fog, because it tends to be much hotter then. But the last one in 2000 that I went to, it was so hot that people were getting heat sickness. I mean, that happened every year, but they'd done something with retarring some area of the tarmac. And so people were getting like a chemical illness from the chemicals in the new asphalt. This is like sort of evaporating into the atmosphere, and you're breathing it in, and then it's like 1,000,000,000 degrees. And of course, the tarmac gives you no space for relief because it's just a whole lot of asphalt and concrete. And it's so hot. And then, of course, you've got the planes that are also hot, but totally worth it. And when we went when I was a kid, most of the time when I was a child, when we'd go, we'd often take the bus there. We didn't have a car much of my childhood, but we'd take the bus. We'd hike in forever. Generally wouldn't have anything special with us with like, a big cooler of snacks or whatever. It would be backpacks of snacks and water or drinks, what have you. And we would go on the very light experience because that was our budget. And so it was always a really good time, but I had no comprehension there was another way to see the air show. I mean, for years it was just open tarmac, and then they started to offer tented sections for like officers and their families, and then VIPs. And then a number of years ago they introduced a grandstands where you could purchase a ticket and see them from the stands. But all of it is just like you're guaranteed to get a sunburn, because no matter how many times you apply sunscreen, it's just not sufficient when you're in that exposure. Maybe mild hearing loss, 1,000% worth it to see the planes. Never a headache, but sometimes, yes, legitimately heat sickness. So, but a good time was had by all. So I've been going to these shows, like I said, since I was in the womb, and continuing every year. So after the debacle of 2000, they switched the air show to be later in the year. It was going to be the end of September in 2001. And then, of course, 9/11 happened. And so all the bases were closed down that year. The whole thing was forfeited. Nobody had any shows through the end of the year. And so I didn't get to go to the air show that year. And I've talked about the Blue Angels a number of times. I have just like so much fondness for them. It's like such a cool I mean, not only are they talented, but they're serving, and it's just all these layers. And of course, the really fond childhood memories, everything about being in that experience. My dad so excitedly sharing about his time in the service. He was in the Army and the Coast Guard, and why he loved certain planes, and planes that his dad would have seen when he was in Korea, and further back with other family members who served in other wars. Just really a very special time, always a special time. And I went wherever my dad went, and so there's lots of running from plane to plane. The air show is totally different now, but lots of the things are similar. Running from plane to plane to get to experience all the different elements was always just like such a special core memory for me. And so I did not realize, although I've been talking about it and was showing, videos had come up on my feed, and so I was sharing them with my husband and showing him. But I hadn't really thought much about any of that per se. So this last year for my birthday in October, he had surprised me with a trip to San Diego, just to kind of it was actually a really epic trip. It was to show him my childhood. So like the first day was just taking him around to special places from where I grew up. And so we toured elementary school that I went to, and middle school, and my high school. But I went to loads of different schools. So we just saw like a glimpse of them, and a couple of old houses that I lived at, and motels that we lived at. That's a story for another day. But it was fun to kind of tour around these different places and tell him stories about it, and just sort of give him a deeper glimpse into some of my favorite places and spaces, and seeing the sunset at Terramar, going to Extraordinary Desserts. I mean, we jammed so much stuff into a day. And of course, I always loved going to Carlsbad, especially in high school and after I graduated. Loads of fond memories of like skateboarding down the middle of the main streets, going to night surf, or just sit on the sand at night during red tide, and like all the bioluminescence in the waves. Just like really cool to sit there, and just there's something about being at the ocean that nothing compares to, especially if you grew up in that space. It's like stepping back time machine style into your childhood. So we had a really fun time. And so the next morning, that first day, we also went and visited my dad's grave. He is buried in Miramar, which is also kind of cool that he's there. He's in a military cemetery there. And so I went and just visited with my dad, and brought him flowers and spent some time there. And while we were sitting there, I look up and I was like, oh my gosh, how crazy is that? That's Fat Albert. And Fat Albert is the C-130 that's part of the Blue Angels fleet. And I said, oh, they must be practicing. Oh, what a bummer. I wish we had come. I wish we had known. We could have waited and come next week to go to the show, because oftentimes they would come the week before, be there for about a week practicing or so, or a few days, and then they would have the show. And so I was thinking about, I need to look this up. And I look over at my husband, and he has this dread face, and I thought, oh no, I have real potential of blowing a surprise. Or him being disappointed that he didn't think that. Anyways, so I just didn't bring it up anymore, because of the look on his face, like he had lost all color. It reminded me very much of our engagement. So I'll have to elaborate on that story another day. But he just immediately went blank-faced, and I thought, leave it alone. Okay, so I left it alone. And so we continued on our adventures through the day. We Point Loma, we went everywhere that first day. And then as we were getting ready to go to bed, he said, okay, so I have a surprise in the morning. You need to be up by this time. We have to be getting going. And I said, okay, that's great. So we're all set. We're going to get up early, and we have to be someplace or leaving where we were staying by 7:30. It's like, all right, whatever, I'll get up, then we'll be set to go. So you're getting ready in the morning, and I said, so what should I wear? I want to be sure that I'm dressed appropriately, or, ready to go. And he said, well, it's a surprise. And he comes back and he goes, we're going to go see the Blue Angels. And I was like, what? So I was so excited. Okay, so we get to see the Blue Angels, but not just go to see the Blue Angels. I get to see the Blue Angels at MCAS. So that's awesome. So we're getting in there to be there early, and I'm thinking, well, this is really cool. I'm so excited. I'm also thinking, crap, I need more sunscreen. I'm going to get fried. There's like, not enough cover, what have you. So we get in there, and of course I'm like stopping for all the photos, because there are way more photo op moments now. Of course, they have like different banners you can take photos in front of, and they have the one with Fat Albert, and they've got the diamond formation, taking pictures in front of that, and then some of the other planes, and looking at the different planes. And he's like, oh, well, let's keep going because there's a thing down here. So he doesn't just take me to the show, which honestly would have been totally cool enough. He gets he gets us seats in one of the tents, like a bougie tent that has like food and shade, and then a whole, like, in front of the main runway deck area where you can sit and watch as they're getting in and taking off, and all of the things that you can't really see anymore unless you're at least in the grandstands, because there's not a lot of open spaces. Either any of the areas where there's an opening, they are ushering you by, because it's like a security risk that you would be hovering there while there's an opening that could get to the planes. So you're either in the grandstands to see things that are happening right on the runway space, or you are in one of these covered bougie tent spaces. So we go into one of these. I do remember there was one year my dad, because it was just so hot, and I was like, I get really red when I'm overheated. Like, my face gets so red. And so I look like I'm going to have a stroke. And it's been that way since I was a little kid. There was one year it was just really, really hot. My dad was like looking around, and finally went up to one of the guys and said, hey, how much to get in one of the tents at this point? Because we had already been there for hours, and still a couple hours before the Blue Angels would be coming on. And they normally come in the afternoon, 3 to 4 p.m. And so the guy says, yeah, it's $50. And he goes, $50 what? He goes, a person. My dad's like, never mind, we're fine. But he was seriously contemplating it. And we would get all kinds of random souvenirs, like the videos or DVDs of the Blue Angels. My dad always got pins, the plane pins. He would find one that he just absolutely had to have each year. And then, of course, posters and things like that, but just like all the good stuff. And Cheyenne actually got to go one year when Dickie was a baby too. They both went. We went together as a family. That was probably in 2000, actually. Yeah, that was probably in 2000, but we all went, and that was like really fun. She had her little red, white, and blue. She had a flag dress. It was so cute. Her little white sandals, and she had her pigtails with sunscreen on the part so she would not scorch her poor head. But anyways, we got to have this very bougie experience comparatively, which I just was like totally blown away by. So we got breakfast, and then lunch, and then there were snacks, and there were beverages galore, and I could not believe it. But then once the shows were starting, we ended up going out onto the like patio area that's right there at the runway, and it was we kind of forfeited our umbrella seat, unfortunately, so that we could be like up closer and front and center. And I could not bring myself to go sit down, even though I knew I did not have on sufficient sunscreen for this experience. But let that not get in the way. So we stood out there for hours just watching, and I was like beside myself with joy. That feeling and then of course, like, it was only next level once the Blue Angels came up and they did their aerial performance. Just I love when they like shoot back over the crowd and you just like feel that jet power through the entirety of your body, and just like chills. It's like when you're at a concert and you're at the stage and you feel you feel physically the reverberation from the music because you're so close in proximity to the speakers. That's my favorite way to see a show. Like, if I can't feel the music, not just hear it, then what am I even doing here? I could listen to it on the radio or at home on CD. But it was incredible, and it was really special, very cool to be able to share that with my husband, because it such a ongoing thematic part of my childhood was to be at the air show. And I'm sure that's not a big deal to a lot of people. I'm sure plenty of folks have ongoing memories of, oh, every year we did this. But there weren't a lot of things that we did as a family because of financial limitations, where we did them regularly. But there was no cost to go into the air show. I mean, we would buy things while we were there, but there was no automatic cost. So it wasn't like, oh, we go to Disneyland every year as a family. We did not do that. We went to Disneyland. I know I went once when I was about 2. I saw a picture recently. So adorable. And then we went for my sister's birthday, or we went once when I was about 11. And then we went for my sister's birthday one year when I was about 17 or 16 or 17, or maybe a little older. Anyways, there wasn't a lot of these experiences where we were going places like that. Nothing that would be expensive. And there was nothing that we did on a super regular basis like that, where it continued no matter where we lived. So, I mean, I remember going to see an air show when we lived in Knoxville. And I think I recall an air show when we lived in Kentucky as well. We traveled somewhere near there to go to the air show. But to have that as an ongoing, every year we went, was like the most stable, reliable thing of my childhood. And that sounds sad, but really I have so many great memories of that. And it made my experience, okay, so everything about going to the show was really just next level amazing. I did get frizzly fried, and I had a spectacular tan line about it because I had like a scallop sleeve on my shoulder. So it was like a little scallop mark with the burn in the middle. That was awesome. Thankfully, I was wearing kind of a reddish color, so it all blended like tomato, because I'm really generally cognizant of not getting too much sun. But I didn't want to leave my post to go buy more sunscreen. They sell it everywhere, but that was my bad. I thought I packed sunscreen. I did not. I packed after sun lotion. Helpful, I'm sure. So I've been more careful in packing since then. Oh well. But when I was thinking back and reflecting on going to the show, I thought how much cooler it was that, oh my gosh, I'm going to get choked up, that my dad still gets to see the air show every year, because his grave is right there. Like, it's in the flight path, where they loop out and come back around. And I was thinking about it while I was at the show, because again, I had just been to his grave the day before. That is probably like, that's like the coolest thing, because his dad and mom and other family members are buried at Fort Rosecrans. And I think they were already full, which is why we didn't contemplate having him there. But to be able to have him there at Miramar, and so he gets to see the air show be in that flight path every year, is just, it's really very cool. And so it didn't dawn on me until we were there and we were talking about it afterwards, and like, man, that was so cool. I can't believe we went, and thank you so much. And it was like such an awesome gift for my husband, like a spectacular adventure, things that we get to share, a walk down memory lane, and then an epic experience at the air show. But it had been 24 years since I had been to the air show. And that is like crazy how quick life gets away from you. Wait, what? How is that possible? And I'm doing the math. No, it was the last one I went to was in 2000. And here we're going in October of 2024. What? How is that possible? But it was amazing. And I had such a good time. So if you have not gone to an air show, even because I lived near Luke Air Force Base in Surprise for years, and I loved that because it reminded me of living in San Diego near MCAS Miramar, and hearing the planes go over. I think that's the only thing that makes me kind of sad about living on the east side of town is I'm not close to that anymore, so I don't hear the jets. But I've been driving into Surprise recently for other stuff, and so I get to hear them, and it makes me happy. I love it. But if you have not gone to an air show, Luke does do an air show. I've never gone to one of the Luke shows, but they have the Thunderbirds fly there, and they're also spectacular. But if you have not gone to an air show, you have to go. It's amazing. It's so worth it. But definitely go to one that has one of those aerial teams, the Blue Angels or the Thunderbirds, that are performing, because there is nothing as cool as that. And seriously, to see it in person just does not compare to seeing it on videos, even though the videos are super cool. So I hope you have some kind of spectacular lifelong memory or tradition in your family, but the Blue Angels is definitely mine, the most stable and consistent family tradition that we had. So now I'm gonna have to take my kids again. We'll have to do like a reunion tour of going to the Blue Angels, because I think my son in particular would really, really enjoy it, and it would be cool to be able to share that with him, start a whole new tradition. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. Come back again and I'll tell you another story. Thanks.